Have you ever wondered if what we call good and bad is actually good and bad? Or if we have just been taught to believe so? What if I tell you that all our morality, all our standards of right and wrong, are just a hoax? A trap that the weak have woven to ensnare the strong? Do you have the courage to look into the eyes of your most sacred beliefs and ask, are you true or false? Today we are going to dive into the world of a book, which is not a book, but a dynamite. A book which tears down every wall of the stately palace of philosophy and shows us its ruined foundations. We are talking about history's most rebellious and most dangerous philosopher, Friedrich Nietzsche, and his most poignant and outspoken work, Beyond Good and Will. This book doesn't just answer some questions. It raises a question on every answer of yours. In this video, we will travel with Nietzsche to a world that is far beyond this small battle between good and evil. It is far beyond. We will learn how goodness was actually invented by the weak out of their hatred and helplessness. We will understand the difference between the morality of masters and the morality of slaves. We will meet the free spirit who dares to break away from the divisions of divisions. And we will hear the voices of new philosophers of the future who will not just discover the truth, but create new truths. This video will not give your mind any rest. This will challenge him. It will make you uncomfortable and maybe even angry. But the promise is that at the end of this journey, you will never be able to look at morality and truth with the same innocence again. Are you ready for this ruthless tearing apart of every belief you have? Are you ready to jump into this world beyond good and evil? So let's start this exciting journey. Chapter number 1, The Prejudices of the Philosophers. When Truth Becomes a Woman. Friends, Friedrich Nietzsche starts this explosive book of his with a very big bang. He directly attacks those whom we consider to be the chief priests of knowledge, that is, on the philosophers. For centuries, philosophers have been telling us that they are seekers of truth. They present themselves as impartial and holy seekers, whose sole aim is to know the ultimate truth of the world. But here Nietzsche is asked a very piercing and psychological question. What if this is all just an act? What if these philosophers are not seekers of truth, but advocates of their own deep prejudices? Nietzsche begins his talk with a very interesting analogy. He says, suppose Anna is a woman. So does he say that all the philosophers till now have tried to conquer this woman truth? Because they do not understand this woman. They want to take possession of it in a very blind and stubborn manner. All of them are stubborn. He first creates a theory in his mind and then spends his entire life creating arguments to prove that theory right. Every core philosophy that we understand is a very logical and fair building, Nietzsche says. In fact, there is nothing other than the personal confession of that philosopher. This is his own autobiography written unknowingly. Every philosopher wants to impose his morality, his right and wrong on the entire universe. He says, this is how I live. So this is the best way to live, and everyone should live like this. Spinoza's mathematical philosophy, Kant's philosophy of duty. What is all this? According to Nietzsche, all this is just a reflection of the individual needs and psychological makeup of those philosophers. They are not looking for the truth, just want to make their world the way they want it. This attack by Nietzsche is very deep. He is saying that no thought can be completely unbiased. There is some desire working behind every thought, and that desire is the desire for truth. But let us ask Nietzsche, why do we want the truth? Why don't we want lies, uncertainty, or ignorance? Is living in truth always better than living in lies? This is the question no philosopher had dared to ask before. We all have accepted that truth is good and lies are bad, but Nietzsche says why? What if sometimes lies and pretense are more important than truth to sustain life? Nietzsche asks us to look behind the arguments of philosophers. He says that we should not ask whether his theory is logical or not. We must ask why this philosopher needed this particular theory. Which of his moral or psychological aspiration is being fulfilled through this theory? When we start asking these questions, we realize that there is a hidden agenda behind every philosophy. Philosophers do not start with an empty mind. They start with a deep belief, a motivation, an instinct, and then use their intelligence just to justify that belief. So in this first chapter, we question the very principles of Western philosophy from the bottom up. He makes the very concept of truth questionable. He is saying that there is no such thing as one absolute universal truth. What we are all looking for. Every truth is someone's point of view, and behind every point of view, there is a deep desire working. What wish is that?
Oh.
What is the fundamental energy that drives every living thing, every philosopher, and every idea to move forward and spread? Nietzsche gives it a very powerful name. And to know that name, and to understand the engine of Nietzsche's philosophy, you will have to wait for the next chapter. Chapter number 2, The Engine of Life, The Secret of Willpower. In the previous chapter, we saw how Friedrich Nietzsche rejected the claim of philosophers to be mere seekers of truth. Nietzsche argued that behind every philosophy, there is a hidden prejudice and a deep desire. Now in this chapter, we will focus on that very fundamental desire, that very primitive energy which Nietzsche considers to be the engine of all life and the entire universe. This is the most important and most misunderstood idea of his later philosophy. This is willpower. What does it mean to have willpower or the desire for power? When we hear the word power, we often think of ruling over others, suppressing them, or exercising political control over them. But Nietzsche's will to power is much deeper, more fundamental, and more personal than this. For them, it is not just the desire to survive. Thinkers like Darwin had said that every living being just wants to stay alive. Self-preservation is his most important instinct. But Nietzsche says, this is a very weak and pessimistic idea. A healthy and living-hearted creature doesn't just want to stay alive. He wants to increase his power. He wants to expand. He wants to overcome obstacles. He wants to dominate his environment and wants to mold it according to his wishes. This will to power is present in every living thing. Even a tiny seed breaks through a rock and comes out. It is not just trying to survive. He is demonstrating his willpower. When a lion hunts, he does not do so just to satisfy his hunger. He also does it to express his strength and his dominance. And when a human being creates something new, a work of art, a theory, or an empire, then all this is also a form of his willpower. For Nietzsche, this is the most fundamental and most real force in the universe. Whatever is happening in the world is a play of different forms of this one willpower. Now apply this idea to philosophy. As we saw in the previous chapter, Nietzsche says that when a philosopher creates a new philosophy, he is not just searching for the truth, he is actually using his willpower. He wants to impose his interpretation, his point of view on the entire world. He wants the world to be seen from his perspective. He wants his values to become the values of the world. Every philosophy is a creation of the world in a tyrannical manner. It is a creative, but also a violent act. Similarly, morality is also a field of willpower. When a group says this is good and this is bad, it is not just making a moral judgment. He is trying to impose his values on others by using his will. He is trying to decide what kind of people will be considered powerful and respected in the society, and what kind of people will be considered weak and condemnable. For Nietzsche, willpower in itself is neither good nor bad. It just is. This is a basic reality of life. The question is not whether we have willpower or not. The question is, how do we express it? Do we express it in a healthy, creative, and self-conquering way? Or do we express it in a sick, reactionary, and hateful way? A strong and healthy person has the willpower to make himself even stronger, to face new challenges, and to shape himself into a work of art. Whereas a weak person's willpower is used in taking revenge on others, humiliating them and portraying his weakness as a virtue. And here begins the most important and bloodiest struggle of morality. On one side are those people whose willpower says yes to life, and on the other side are those people whose willpower says no to life. On one side is the morality of the masters, and on the other side is the morality of the slaves. What are these two moral universes? Now slave morality has quietly taken over the entire Western world. To understand the story of this great moral battle, you will have to follow me to the next chapter, where we will take our first step into this world beyond good and evil. Chapter number 3, the morality of masters and slaves when weakness becomes a virtue. In the last chapter, we understood the powerful idea of Nietzsche, willpower, which is the fundamental energy working within every living thing. We also learned that the question is not whether we have the desire or not, but how we express it. Now, in this chapter, we will see how these two different expressions of will give rise to two completely opposite kinds of morality. This is the part of the philosophy below that is most provocative and most shocking. He tells us that what we call good and bad today was not always so. This is only a kind of morality, and that too of the weakest and sickest kind. Ethics takes us back in history and identifies two fundamental types of ethics: the morality of masters and the morality of slaves. Let us first understand the ethics of the owners. This morality arises from powerful, noble, self-confident, and high-minded people. These are the people who know their own worth. They do not need anyone else's certificate. They themselves are the creators of values. They look inside themselves and whatever feels like their own. Whatever is powerful, proud, and life-enhancing, they call good. Good in the owner's morals means noble, strong, courageous, and passionate. And what does bad mean? Bad does not mean evil or sinful. Bad simply means everything that is common, that is weak, that is timid, that is pitiful, and that is trivial. This is a form of contempt, not compassion. The master looks at those who are weaker than him and considers them bad or inferior and moves ahead. He doesn't hate them because hatred is also a kind of deep relationship, just doesn't care about them. The morals of the masters include friendship, gratitude, and respecting even enemies. But all this happens only for those who are equal. Now let us come to the second and completely opposite morality, the morality of slaves. Where does it originate from? It arises from people who are weak, oppressed, and who are unhappy with their condition. They do not have the power to create their own prices like owners do. His morality is always a reaction. He looks outside first. They look at their masters and say no. Their whole morality is based on this no. Whatever the masters do is bad for them. So the master's power, his pride, his wealth, his happiness, all this becomes evil in the eyes of the slaves. If the boss is the devil, then who will be good? The best would be one who is not like the owner at all. So slave calls his own weaknesses and his own helplessness as virtues. So humility, kindness, sympathy, patience, and poverty all become symbols of goodness. This is a very clever and psychologically deep trick. Nietzsche calls it spiritual retribution, because slave cannot take revenge from his master in the real world. So he takes revenge on her in the world of morality, in the world of imagination. He says, yes, you are strong, you are rich, but you are bad, and I who am weak and poor am good. And in the end, I will be rewarded in heaven, and so will you. Nietzsche calls the emotion behind this slave morality resentment, which is a French word meaning repressed hatred, jealousy, and feelings of revenge. This is a poisonous emotion that finds happiness only in demeaning others rather than creating something new. Now Nietzsche's shares makes its most prominent and most controversial claim. He says that in the last 2,000 years of Western civilization, a very important and very silent revolution has taken place, and that is the victory of slave morality. Below believed that the Judeo-Christian tradition, especially Christianity, was the most prominent and successful example of this slave morality. He defeated the bossy morality of the powerful Roman Empire by making humility, kindness, and mercy the most important virtues. And today's modern democratic and socialist Europe is the ultimate triumph of this slave morality. The language in which we all talk about good and bad today is not the language of masters, but of slaves. We consider sympathy towards the weak to be the most important virtue, and we consider power and ego as the biggest sins. Below, he says that this morality has made man a domesticated person. It has made him safe, but it has also made him small, mediocre, and afraid of life. It has placed obstacles in the way of the birth of great and extraordinary human beings. So what is the way then? What does it mean to go beyond good and evil? This does not mean being immoral or evil. This means recognizing the deceitfulness of this slave morality. This means understanding that this morality is also just a point of view. There is no absolute truth, and this means trying to create a new, stronger, braver, and more life-saying yes ethic. But there is one enemy standing in the way of this effort, and that is religion. Why did Nietzsche consider religion, especially Christianity, to be a propagator of slave morality? We will find the answer to this question in the next chapter. Chapter number 4, Psychology of Religion, When Faith Becomes Weakness. In the last chapter, we understood the deep differences between the two types of morality described by Nietzsche, the morality of masters and that of slaves. We saw how Nietzsche believed that modern Europe was dominated by a slave morality that valued virtues such as weakness, pity, and humility above all else. Now, in this chapter, we will focus on the institution which the philosophers considered to be the main source, and the most powerful propagator of this slave morality, and that is religion, especially Christianity. Nietzsche's attack on religion is the most ruthless and most controversial part of his philosophy. He looks at religion from a psychological perspective and asks, why does a religious person need religion? What is that psychological weakness which needs the support of religion? There were no atheists at heart who were just trying to prove that God does not exist. This question was not important for him. He was asking whether belief in God is good or bad for the human race. Does it make us strong and alive at heart, or weak and anti-life? And his answer was that most religions, and especially Christianity, are a very sophisticated and powerful way of weakening human beings. The argument below is that religion arises from human suffering and fear. When man cannot cope with the suffering, uncertainty, and cruelty of this world, he invents an imaginary, better, and more just world, which he calls heaven. He imagines an almighty Father, God, who will protect him. He will wipe away her tears, and finally reward her for her suffering. From this perspective, religion is a kind of psychological support. There is a crutch, which is for those who do not have the courage to stand on their feet. Nietzsche attacks the basic tenets of Christianity one by one. Like kindness and compassion are considered the most important virtues in Christianity. But let us ask Nietzsche, what is mercy? For them, pity is a very dangerous emotion. When we pity someone, we unknowingly increase his suffering. We encourage him to remain in his weakness. A strong person doesn't show mercy. He either helps those who are equal to him or removes the weaker ones from his path. Nietzsche believed that morality based on pity turns society into a hospital, where everyone is sick and nursing the illness of one another. This is against the law of struggle and development of life. Similarly, Christianity places great emphasis on faith. He says, don't ask questions, just believe. For Nietzsche, this was intellectual suicide. Faith means the desire not to know the truth. It's a way of turning off your mind and escaping difficult questions. Doubt and questioning are the most important qualities for a free soul or a philosopher. While faith also considers the concept of the most prominent sin, Nietzsche's sin, to be a very cruel psychological invention. He says that religion has declared man's natural instincts, such as his sexuality, his aggression, and his desire for power as sinful. Now man began to fight with his own nature and began to feel guilty and impure. This guilt breaks the human being from within and turns him into a pet that can be easily controlled. And above all, religion makes this life, this world, and this body worthless. He says that real life is after death. This world is just a temporary and sorrowful inn. To the wretch, this was the chiefest lie and the greatest crime against life. He was a philosopher who talked about being loyal to the land. He used to say that this is the only world we have, and anyone who teaches you to hate it and tempts you to some imaginary other world is your biggest enemy. He describes weakness as a virtue, cripples the intellect, and makes one despise this life. This may be comfortable for average and herd humans, but this is the biggest obstacle to the development of those extraordinary, strong, and independent souls who are considered by the policy to be the future of humanity. But if religion is just a deception and conventional morality is just slavery, then how should a free man live? Who is he who is called a soul free from morality? Is he a person who breaks all the rules and does whatever he wants? Or it means something else? It's more difficult, it's more great. You will all have to wait for the next chapter to get your first glimpse of that new kind of person. Chapter number 5, The Free Soul Who Dares to Walk Away from the Crowd. Friends, so far we have worked together with Friedrich below to demolish the old buildings of philosophy and morality. We looked at the prejudices of philosophers. He understood the deceit of slave morality and cut through the psychological trap of religion. All this was a work of destruction. But Nietzsche was not just a destroyer. He was also a producer. And he was dreaming of a new kind of human being. A person who is free from all these old ruins and can create a new sky for himself. In this chapter, we will meet the first ray of that same dream of the lowly. We will meet that extraordinary and rare individual who is called the soul, free from morality. Who is this free soul? Is this the man who says, if there is no God and no morality, then I can do whatever I want? Nietzsche says no. This is the lowest and ugliest form of freedom from slavery. This is just a reaction. The free soul is not an immoral animal. Rather, it is a step towards a higher and more rigorous morality. The free spirit is first and foremost a skeptic. He questions everything that society, religion, or tradition accepts as true. He doesn't follow anyone blindly like the birds. He tests every belief, every value on the touchstone of his logic and his experience. For him, nothing becomes true just because many people believe it or has been believed for thousands of years. This is a very lonely and dangerous path. When you start walking away from the crowd looks at you with hate. She calls you bad, dangerous, or crazy. The free soul has to be prepared to endure this loneliness and this infamy. Secondly, the free soul does an experiment. He looks at life as a laboratory. He is not afraid to experiment with different ideas, different morals, and different lifestyles. He wants to know how many different ways there are to live. He does not confine himself to any one identity, any one ideology, or any one country. He's a nomad. He's an intellectual traveler who is always in search of new destinations. He knows that looking at the world from any one perspective is like locking yourself in a beautiful prison. That's why he wears many different masks. Tries to see the world from many different perspectives, so that he can reach a more complete and deeper understanding. Thirdly, and most importantly, the free soul wants to conquer himself. His fight is not so much with the outside world as it is with himself. He struggles with his weaknesses, his fears, his prejudices, and his desire for comfort. He knows that true freedom is not just about breaking away from external bonds. Rather, it is about the bonds within us. He also has to free himself from the anger within him, from all those voices that society has filled inside him. This is a very difficult and painful process that requires dismantling and recreating oneself over and over again. Below says that the free soul is one who creates himself like a work of art. Free souls are very rare. They are not the rule makers of society, but the rule breakers. They are exceptions, no rules. They can also be dangerous to society, Nietzsche says, because they challenge the established order. But they are also necessary for society, because through them, humanity progresses and finds new paths. They are like the mountain peaks, where the wind is very strong and cold, where most people can't live, but from where a new and vast view of the world is visible. Nietzsche was writing this book, Beyond Good and Evil, for these free souls. This was a kind of secret message which he had written for his future friends. He knew that most people of his time would not understand what he said. They will consider him a madman or a devil. But he hoped that in the future, some free souls would be born who would understand his loneliness, his struggle, and his dream. So do you have the traits of a free spirit? You also ask questions? Are you not afraid to stand out from the crowd? Do you constantly try to improve yourself? If yes, then maybe Nietzsche was talking to you. But being a free soul is not a destination. This is just a preparation. There is a bridge. For what? For a new kind of philosopher of the future. Who will be that philosopher? And what will his job be? To hear the first signs of that storm that is coming tomorrow? You'll have to follow me to the next chapter. Chapter number 6. No facts, just interpretations. A new meaning of truth. In the last chapter, we met the courageous and solitary free spirit who questions every established truth. This liberated spirit is the preparation for a new kind of philosopher. But the ground on which this new philosopher will stand will be entirely different from the old ground. The old ground was based on the belief in absolute truth. But the lowly person had placed dynamite under the ground. In this chapter, we will understand one of the most revolutionary and influential theories that changed the entire thinking of the 20th century. That theory is perspectivism. Essence of this theory is hidden in a very famous and shocking sentence below. There are no facts, only interpretations. That means there are no facts. There are only interpretations. This sentence may sound very strange and dangerous when heard for the first time. Does this mean that there is no difference between truth and lie? Does this mean that if I say that the sun rises in the west, then it is as true as saying that it rises in the east? No, this is not what policy means. His hint is much deeper and subtle. Nietzsche's attack is not on facts, but on the idea of absolute objective, godlike truth. For centuries, philosophers and scientists have believed that there is a real and objective reality of the world that is completely independent of our opinions or our interpretations. And our job is to clear our minds and know that reality exactly as it is. It is as if the world is a picture and our mind is a mirror that just has to reflect that picture accurately. It says below that this is a hoax. Such a perspectiveless view is not possible. We can never look at the world straight on. We always look at it from some viewpoint or perspective. And this vision of ours is shaped by our language, our culture, our needs, and most importantly, our will. We just don't know the world. Explain that too. We string together scattered events into a story. We give them a meaning, and this meaning is always our own. Let us understand this with an example. Consider a single incident: a war, a soldier, a general, a politician, a historian, and a mother whose son is fighting in that war. We will see all this from completely different perspectives, as one of them seeing the facts and the rest are just interpreting. Below they will say, no, everyone is making their own interpretations of this, which are shaped by their own perspectives. No one is seeing the absolute truth of war, because there is no such thing. So when policymakers say there are no facts, they don't mean you can believe anything. It means that every fact is already an interpretation. When we say the grass is green, this is also an explanation. Human interpretation based on the structure of our eyes, the presence of the word green in our language, and our need to distinguish grass from other things. A bee whose eyes can see ultraviolet rays will see the same grass in a completely different way. So, whose interpretation is true? Below, we will say that this question itself is wrong. Both are valid interpretations in their own perspectives. What effect does this principle have on morality? This has a very deep impact. There is no absolute truth, there can be no absolute morality. Every morality, whether it is Christian morality or any other, is merely an interpretation. A meaning given to the world by a particular type of human being, such as slaves or masters. No morality can claim to be the only true and universal morality. So, does this mean that all explanations are equal? No. Nietzsche says that some interpretations are better than others. And which one is better? That which prolongs life, that which strengthens the will, that which embraces more perspectives, and that which creates a richer and more complex world. The work of a free soul is to discard old, narrow, and anti-life interpretations and create new, more powerful, and more life-affirming interpretations. This idea of perspectivalism at the bottom gives us a very great intellectual freedom. It teaches us not to become slaves of any one ideology or any one truth. It encourages us to always seek out and respect different viewpoints. But it also gives us a responsibility. If something made up is not true, then it is our responsibility to create the truth and give meaning to the world. Who will take this responsibility? The new philosopher of the future will take up this responsibility. But who is he, and what will be his job? To now this, you will have to go to the next chapter. Chapter number 7, The Philosopher of the Future, When the Thinker Will Make Laws. Friends, till now, with the help of Nietzsche, we have destroyed all the pillars of the old world. We have demolished the idea of absolute truth by calling it an interpretation. And we have exposed the morality of good and evil as a conspiracy of slaves. Now we are the Gulf states in a world that is empty, where there are no ready-made paths. There are no guidelines. This is a very scary, but at the same time a very exciting situation. Who will fill this void? This is where we look to the future from policy and predict a new kind of hero, a new kind of thinker. In this chapter, we will meet the philosophers of the future, who will not just explain the world, but will create the world. Below he says that the philosophers till now are what he calls philosophical laborers. Their job has been simply to understand, organize, and justify the values given by the past. He was just a critic and scholar. The philosophers of the future will not be like this. He will be a true philosopher. They will be not just thinkers, but commanders and lawmakers. They will say the world should be like this. What will be the work of these future philosophers? His first task will be to reevaluate values. They will take every single value of the last 2,000 years of slave morality, Christian morality, and put it to a new test. The criterion will be, does this value enhance life or detract from it? Does it make a person strong or weak? He will reject old values like kindness, humility, and equality because these values are anti-life and promote mediocrity. And then after this destruction, he will work to construct. He will create new values. Where will these values come from? This will not come from any god or any holy book. These values will arise from the will of those philosophers themselves. These values will say yes to life. This will give top priority to qualities like courage, strength, pride, and creativity. His aim will be to create a human being who is the master of his own destiny, who is not afraid of pain and suffering, but makes it his strength, and who lives this life so fully that he would want to repeat it for eternity. This is a nod to Nietzsche's idea of the Superman or Overman. Who will be these philosophers of the future? But they will be free souls who have completed their preparation. Must be very rare and lonely people. They will be considered as bad and hated by the society, because they will refuse to be a part of the group, which the society calls good. Nietzsche says they have to live a dangerous life. They must constantly experiment with new truths, and in the process, they must put themselves at risk again and again. They will be intellectual mountaineers who will dare to climb peaks where no one has gone before. Below, we point out a very interesting difference. Among true philosophers and scholars, scholars only collect knowledge. They are the keepers of the books. But philosophers use knowledge as a weapon. Scholars interpret the ideas of others to shape the future. Philosophers create their own ideas. This new philosopher will also have to be very cruel and ruthless, but from others as well. He will not be a dealer in comfortable truths. He has come to push humanity beyond its comfort zone. His work will be to raise man from his present miserable and mediocre condition to a higher and stronger level. He would be the kind of doctor who would not hesitate to prescribe steep DDHV medicine and perform painful operations to cure the ills of humanity. So this dream at bottom is the dream of a new kind of elite, an intellectual elite. It will not be based on birth or wealth, but on strength of soul and strength of character. These will be the people who will set new goals for humanity, will give it a new meaning. In a world where God is dead and all the old values have lost their worth, this is a very big and very dangerous dream. This goes completely against modern ideas of democracy and equality. But the policies are challenging us. He asks whether we are satisfied with just a small life of comfort and security, or whether we aspire to something bigger, more difficult, and more glorious. But society does not consist only of philosophers and common people. There is another type of people who consider manure to be very sacred and moral. Nietzsche calls him a saint, but what is a saint in Nietzsche's eyes? Is he really as holy as he seems? We will find the answer to this question in the next chapter. Chapter 8. Psychology of Saints. When purity becomes a mask, friends. So far we have seen that powerful and challenging ideal of Nietzsche as a philosopher of the future. This is a human being who breaks old values and creates new values. But there is another type of ideal man considered in the society who is completely different from the philosopher, and that is the saint. A saint is a person who renounces the world, kills his desires, and lives a pure and self-disciplined life. In most cultures, and especially in the Christian tradition, saints are seen as the pinnacle of morality and spirituality. But Nietzsche, who questioned every sacred thing, did not spare even that saint. In this chapter, we will delve with Nietzsche into the depths of the psychology of the saint and see what may be hidden behind that mask of holiness. Nietzsche begins his analysis with a very straightforward question. Why do people believe in saints? The answer is because a saint is seen doing what is nearly impossible for a common man, and that is to achieve total victory over oneself. He seems to suppress and control his most powerful human desires, such as sexual desire, desire for power, and desire for wealth. This is an extraordinary performance, and after seeing this performance, the common man bows down in reverence before it. He thinks that this person must have some divine power. But Nietzsche is not satisfied with this external display as a psychologist. He asks, what is the real inspiration behind this self-conquest? Does it truly come from holiness and love for God? Or could there be something darker and more human lurking behind it? Below says that we must look at the will behind everything. And in the case of the saint, his rigorous penance and self-confession is also a very subtle and powerful form of his willpower. How below says that when a person feels that he cannot express his will in the real world, i.e., by directly ruling over others, he chooses a rather more insidious path. He begins to rule himself. He makes his own desires, his own nature, his enemy, and rules over it like a cruel dictator. What is all this self-torture, this fasting, this sacrifice? All of this is a display of one's power over oneself. The saint is saying, see how powerful I am. can also do what no one else can do. I can even defeat my own nature. It's a very perverted but very intense feeling of power. And what does he get from this self-conquest? He gets an immensity power over others. People start worshiping him. He turns his weakness and his back into his most important strength. He presents himself as a mirror in which a common man sees all his weaknesses and all his sinful desires and is filled with guilt. The holiness of the saint makes the common man realize how impure and how insignificant he is. In this way, the saint establishes a psychological rule over others without raising any sword, just on the basis of his holiness. Nietzsche is not saying that all saints are deceivers or hypocrites. Many people follow their beliefs sincerely. But Nietzsche is saying that we should understand the psychological needs behind their actions. He says that often a person who is afraid to face the challenges of life, who wants to escape from the complexity and cruelty of this world, takes refuge in the desert of purity, where he finds a simple and straightforward world, where there is only God and his own soul. It's a great way to escape from the responsibilities of the real world. There is a huge difference between a philosopher and a saint in terms of morality. The philosopher wants to say yes to life by living in this world and accepting its every challenge, every sorrow, and every happiness. Whereas the saint considers this world to be an illusion or a prison and wants to escape from it. Wants to create philosophical values, whereas the saint only wants to follow the established divine values. The philosopher's will is creative, whereas the saint's will is mostly negative and self-destructive. So for the moralist, St. Gallman's ethics is a more refined form of the ethics. He is an ideal who despises life and displays a weak and tormented will. This is the exact opposite of the future philosophers we're envisioning with policy. But do only philosophers and saints decide the values in the society? No. There is another class which considers itself very knowledgeable, and that is of scholars and scientists. Are they really as unbiased as they claim? We'll find the answer to this question in the next chapter. Chapter number 9. Scholars and Scientists, when knowledge becomes a profession. Friends, till now we have, together with Nietzsche, removed the masks of philosophers, moralists, and saints. We saw how there is some deep psychological desire or prejudice working behind all this. But now we come to a class which claims itself above all to be absolutely impartial and objective. The class of scholars and scientists? These are the people who talk only about facts and evidence instead of emotions and beliefs. Are they really as honest and unbiased as they appear to be? Or is there a hidden agenda behind their claims of objectivity? In this chapter, we will walk inside this factory of knowledge with Nietzsche and see what is being cooked there. Nietzsche believed that, in his own time, the 19th century, the scientific spirit was becoming a new kind of religion. After the death of the old God, people now started worshiping truth and facts. And the priests of this new religion were scholars and scientists. But Nietzsche was as skeptical about this new religion as he was about the old religion. He says that most scholars and scientists are not true philosophers or free spirits. They are just philosophical laborers. As we have mentioned earlier also, their job is not to give birth to any new, bold, and dangerous ideas. His job is to collect old ideas, to classify and interpret them. They work in a very small and secure area. They may be a very good specialist, but they lack ego and broad vision. They may have a great tool, but they couldn't decide what to use that tool for. Below makes fun of the objective person who claims to have no viewpoint of his own. It is just like a mirror which reflects the reality without any discrimination. Nietzsche says that such a person is just a very sophisticated and complex tool. He has no center of his own, no willpower of his own. It just reflects the information coming from outside. There can be no depth, no passion, and no creativity in such a person. He may be a good researcher, but he can never become a great thinker. And this is where Nietzsche does a very deep psychological analysis. Where does this desire for impartiality and objectivity come from? He asks. Why would anyone want to kill all their personal feelings and desires and become just a tool of knowledge? Nietzsche says it's often a sign of a deeper weakness or fear. This is the way of those who want to escape from the bigger responsibilities of life, like creating values and taking decisions. He says, I am just telling the facts. It is not my job to decide whether it is good or bad. It's a kind of intellectual escapism. Apart from this, Nietzsche believed that most scientists also live under a kind of superstition, and that superstition is the desire for truth. They believe that it is always good to know the truth, and we should search for the truth at all costs. But, as we saw earlier, Nietzsche himself questions this belief. He asks why. What if some illusions are more important to life? What if staying on the surface is a sign of deeper understanding? Scientists never ask this question. They are so engrossed in their search for truth that they never think about what is the ultimate purpose of this search. Nietzsche's intention was not to reject science. He himself was a very scientific-minded person, and he hated lazy and illogical thinking. But he wanted to put science in its right place. Wanted science to remain a means, should not become achievable. Science can tell us how the world works, but it cannot tell us how we should live. It can give us facts about the world, but to give meaning to those facts to give them. A value is not the task of science but of philosophy, or more correctly of the philosopher of the future. So even scholars and scientists, despite their claims of objectivity, work within a particular kind of bias and a particular kind of morality. They are also part of that group. It's just that their flock is a little more educated. But is there anyone who stands out from the pack and sets his own price? Yes, and he is called a noble person. But who is a true nobleman in the eyes of the lowly? Does he mean birth or wealth? We now move on to the next chapter to solve this last and most important puzzle. Chapter No. 10 Conclusion: What lies beyond good and evil? So friends, we have come to the end of this stormy, challenging, and shocking journey of Friedrich Nietzsche. Beyond good and evil, together with them, we have pulled off the masks of everything considered sacred in philosophy, religion, morality, and science, and seen the human, and often too human, face that lies behind them. Now in this final chapter, we will sum up this entire destruction and ask what is left after all this. If good and bad are just an illusion and truth is just an interpretation, then how should we live? What world do policies leave us in? This book of Nietzsche does not give any easy answers, does not give us any new moral principle about do this and don't do that. Rather, it leaves us in a situation where we have to create our own theories. This is the true meaning of going beyond good and evil. This is a very important freedom, but it is also a very important responsibility. The essence of this book lies in the conflict between two types of morality, the morality of masters and that of slaves. Below shows us that the morality we live by today as universal, and the only truth is actually just slave morality born out of weakness, fear, and hatred. He challenges us to break out of this herd morality and rediscover or create a bolder, stronger, and more life-affirming owner morality. Who is this owner or noble person? For Nietzsche, it is not about birth or wealth. A true noble man is one whose soul is noble. It is the individual who sets his own price. He does not care about the praise or disrespect of others. He is the judge of his own actions, feels a power and abundance inside him, and he wants to express this power by helping others or by creating something new. He is not afraid of sorrow and pain, but considers it a necessary challenge for his development. He respects even his enemies because he knows that a strong enemy makes you even stronger, and above all, he loves this life with all its joys and sorrows so much that he accepts it as it is. Beyond good and evil shows us the path of the free spirit, which is the first step towards this nobility. It teaches us to question everything, even about our own most held beliefs. It teaches us not to be slaves to any one truth, but to try to see the world from many different perspectives. It teaches us to laugh at ourselves and live life as an experiment. What is the legacy below? He did not give us any comfortable darshan. He took away all our crutches. Of God, of ultimate truth, and also of established morality. And they leave us alone in a dangerous and uncertain world. But he also gave us a very important gift. He gave us back responsibility for our own lives. He told us that we are the creators of our own destiny. We are not just creatures of this world, but also its artists. We can create value and give ourselves a meaning. This book is as relevant and as explosive today as it was more than 100 years ago. It tries to wake us up from our own comfortable moral slumber. It asks us whether we just want to live a safe and average life like the birds, or we have the courage to live a great life full of dangers and challenges like a lion. The choice is ours. The lowly one has simply placed both paths clearly before us. And with this, friends, Today we reach the end of this amazing journey. Through this inspiring book, we learn together how our morality and our values are shaped by historical and psychological forces, and how we can go beyond these preconceived notions and give our lives a new meaning. I hope that whatever we have learned through this audiobook will not be limited to just listening, but will also guide your life. Remember, this knowledge is not just information, but the key to awakening the immense potential within you. This video teaches you how to question your beliefs, how to break free from mob mentality and use your willpower to become a strong and creative person. But most importantly, it teaches you how powerful you are and how much potential you have within you to create your own values and shape your own destiny. Now that you're finishing listening to this audiobook, I want to make a request to you. Remember these principles, consider these, and try to apply them in your daily life. And always remember that you have immense power within you, and you can become whatever you want. Thank you for your valuable time and for joining me on this journey. I hope you enjoyed this video and that it taught you something new about morality, truth, and the meaning of life. If you liked this video, then like it. Don't forget to share it with your friends and family so that they can also benefit from this knowledge. And yes, do not forget to subscribe to our channel so that you keep getting more such inspirational and informative video. And yes, do tell us your feedback in the comments. Your thoughts and suggestions are very important to us and will help us to create even better video in the future. So please give your opinion in the comments section. Which of the ideas below did you find most challenging? We will be back soon with another new video. Till then, take care of yourself, keep learning, and always keep moving forward towards your goals. Remember, there is a field beyond good and evil,